Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Education, SOE, Master's Degree Programs, Master of Arts, Distance Education, MAID, First Year, MDE, 413 Learner Support Systems and Services, Block-3 Counseling and Tutoring Services, Unit 1, Counseling.
1.0 Introduction. Counseling is a collaborative process through which individuals are helped to define goals, make decisions, and solve problems related to personal, social, educational, and career concerns. In other words, counseling is a special category of human relationship that aims to help an individual to manage his/her problems. It is a conversational process that can be instrumental in the development of skills that help learners effectively to confront and cope with uncertainties and conflicts. Counseling is a chance to talk over what is in one's mind with a counselor who can help that person to learn new skills and ways of looking at situations so that he/she will be more capable of solving problems on his/her own. 1.1 Learning Outcomes. After working through this unit, you should be able to discuss counseling as learner support services, explain the importance of counseling, discuss when counseling is required, describe the various forms of counseling, list and describe the qualities and skills of a counselor and give examples of their use, and categorize counseling in distance education along to different lines. Development. Problem solving and academic non-academic. 1.2 Supporting learners through counseling. Many learners experience both academic and non-academic difficulties of some kind during their studies. Many of them encounter problems that are not easily resolvable, or their usual ways of handling problems aren't working well for some reason. For example, they may find that talking to friends or relatives about their concerns is impossible or unsatisfying. Some common concerns confronting learners include anxiety, stress, low self-confidence, relationship difficulties, self-defeating behaviors, academic problems, sexual identity concerns, and decision-making dilemmas. Issues addressed might also include semester withdrawal requests, alternative readmission evaluations, poor grades, test anxiety, learning disabilities, dissertation support, study skills, and others. Thus, counseling services can provide assistance in many ways which need to be studied thoroughly. 1.2.1 What is counseling? Let us start by defining more closely the three activities that constitute counseling. Informing. Informing means giving appropriate and correct information to learners, e.g., I'm sorry, the university's regulation don't allow you to submit that assignment late. Advising. Advising involves suggesting appropriate course of action to learners, perhaps offering several options but recommending one, especially for the particular learners, e.g., well, we have two maths courses. You could take any one, but as you want to be an engineer, I suggest you to go for the applied maths course. Counseling. Counseling is helping learners clarify their needs, feelings or motivations so that they can make an appropriate decision for themselves, e.g., so you're not sure what you want to do with your life, but you'd like to do something interesting. Describe to me what you mean by interesting. It is about helping learners decide for themselves what is best for them as regards the choice of course and career, overcoming of obstacles, and so on. So, it is entirely learner-dependent rather than knowledge-dependent. As a counselor, you need clarifying skills rather than knowledge skills. Informing. Informing is about knowledge which is largely independent of the learner course requirements, regulations, statistics, and so on. So, you do not have to take the learners very much into account when offering such information. You do, however, have to have a high level of appropriate knowledge and the ability to communicate it clearly. Advising. Advising is a mixture of knowledge and learner dependence, which is something in between informing and counseling. You can think of these three activities as a continuous spectrum of areas which merge into each other. 1.2.2 Theories of Counseling. Counseling, in its general sense, can be seen as a branch of psychotherapy, bearing the same relationship to psychotherapy as a local doctor might have with the nearest hospital. Such doctors can deal perfectly and adequately with the most common ailments. Occasionally, they may have to refer patients to the hospital for much more drastic treatment. However, the medical theories underlying both the doctors' and hospitals' works are the same. Psychotherapy was originally associated with the work on psychoanalysis of Freud, Jung, and others, the process of probing the subconscious in order to lay bare inner motivations. Recently, however, there has been a reaction against psychoanalysis in the form of the humanistic psychology movement. In this movement, the role of the psychotherapist is as an enabler rather than a prober. The humanistic psychologist helps his or her clients to explore their situation for themselves so that they can move towards understanding and dealing with their problems on their own. There are various humanistic psychotherapies: Gestalt, transactional analysis, psychodrama, bioenergetics, and so on, some with a degree of rationality and success, some less well founded. One in particular has been found by many people to be relevant in educational settings and is known as Rosering therapy after its founder Carl Rogers, 1902 to 1987. The underlying theory of Rosering therapy is essentially simple. It is non-directive. Clients are helped to talk over and clarify their problems for themselves, taking charge of their own therapy. The therapist are therefore to a lesser extent the counselors, brings certain qualities and skills to the relationship that enables clients to do this in their own way and in their own time. We have oversimplified the theory, but in a sense it may not be unfamiliar to you. Rogers has reinvented the concept of meditation and prayer, with the support of which troubled persons commune with God and try to move towards finding solutions to their troubles. Rogers' contribution is to suggest that a second person, with particular qualities and skills, can help in this process. 1.3 Importance of counseling. Studying at a distance is both challenging and demanding. Helping distance learners to progress successfully through their studies is even more challenging. Counseling has a crucial role to play in this mode of teaching learning. It intends to make the learners more effective by initiating the students into distance learning, guiding self-learning in the desirable direction, confirming positive learning and reinforcing further learning, providing non-print interventions, promoting and sustaining motivation, developing studentship and learning skills, identifying person-specific problems, and helping to overcome learning disabilities. 1.3.1 Who needs counseling? There is no easy way of predicting who is likely to seek counseling. A self-sufficient learner can study for years, ignoring the counselor, until suddenly one day he/she runs into an intractable problem and needs help. Here are some very general patterns for seeking counseling. More than half of the learners ask for some counseling support at some point of time in their careers. 2. Requests cover the informative, advisory, and counseling queries. The most common time for seeking help is at the pre-entry stage and during the first year of study. 3. The most common areas of request appear to be divided equally between decision points and barriers. 4. The most common topics raised are A. Institution-related problems, B. Course career choice issues, C. Study issues, assessment, exams, and so on, D. Withdrawal issues. There do not appear to be any consistent links between the probability of learners seeking help and their educational background. 6. More women seek help than men, and more arts social science learners seek help than maths science technology learners. But since more women study arts social science than maths science technology, these may be two ways of saying the same thing. Let us emphasize that all these statements and statistics are very approximate and that they might well be quite different in a different socio-economic and cultural climates. 1.3.2 Why is counseling needed? Anyone who does work directly with learners in distance education is likely to realize that it possesses three characteristics which make counseling important: the characteristics of the learners, of the institution, and of the learning process. The characteristics of distance learners. Distance learners may be isolated, both from other learners and the institution, will certainly have had previous educational experience which may have been positive or negative, are very likely to have other substantial time commitments in terms of their home and work, come from a wide variety of backgrounds, both educational and occupational, are thoroughly committed, provided the courses they are taking are at a suitable level and are meeting their real needs. Counseling is important because it is the only way of clarifying real needs, reconciling the conflicting demands of home and work, and coming to terms with isolation and with problems resulting from previous experience. The characteristics of the institution. It is clear that distance teaching institutions tend to develop certain common characteristics, particularly during the process of settling down. They are, or can become, remote. Even an institution which develops a regional network of services is still likely to have its offices hundreds of miles away from its learners. In countries where communication facilities are inadequate, remoteness is compounded by delays and problems in the delivery of course materials and other support services. Complex. An institution that is trying to produce course materials of several different kinds and deliver them to learners as well as provide support services is likely to develop a complex, bureaucratic system of administration. Such systems can be very effective in dealing with large numbers of learners but may be inflexible and damaging when dealing with individuals. Counseling is important in helping to individualize services to learners and in overcoming the problems of system malfunctions. Learning characteristics. The characteristics of both learners and institutions suggest that the nature of the learning process is different in distance education. In particular, a learner must develop an effective set of appropriate learning strategies or study skills. Some learners may already possess these, some may need help. The process of acquiring such skills may be a cognitive one. However, for some learners, for example, those who have a previous history of educational failure, it may be an affective process consisting in part of coming to terms with that previous failure. 1.4 When is counseling needed? Different types of support services are required in distance education by the learners at various stages. They may seek help at their pre-entry stage, during the course stage, at the examination stage, and at the post-study stage. The learners need to take certain decisions while pursuing their studies through distance mode. The decision may be related to whether to apply for a course or not, which courses to opt for, what career possibilities to aim for, whether to withdraw or to keep going, or how much time to devote to family work course. Some learners may need help to take such decisions. Here, counseling plays an important role to help the learners in making the decision and in clarifying their doubts. Along with the above mentioned problems, learners face some other barriers during their studies. These barriers may be study-related, time-related, personal or institutional. Appropriate counseling and tutoring services can solve the problems of the learners to a large extent in open and distance education. 1.4.1 Pre-admission. The type of support required at the pre-entry stage would include guidance about the types of programs and courses available in the Distance Education Institute, pre-admission counseling with regard to selection of courses, information regarding the instructional system, entry, requirements, fee structure, duration of the program of study, advice regarding fee reimbursement and fee concession. The above are general information given to all those who are interested in undergoing education through the distance mode. Apart from these, some learners require additional support services. It is important to understand their motivational level, their limitations as well as the types of problems they encounter. As mentioned earlier, at-risk learners lack motivation and are not goal-oriented. They probably pursue the courses through the distance mode because of parental pressure or the need to do something, but not specifically for developing their intellectual abilities. Hence, they should be allowed to choose the programs and courses which they feel they will be able to complete in the given time frame without any delay. The at-risk learners should also be informed about the recognition of awards given on the successful completion of the course program. These learners also need to be informed about the financial assistance provided by the government to those pursuing the courses programs so that they are not reluctant to enroll due to monetary constraints. The socially disadvantaged learners include those who belong to remote or tribal areas. As far as they are concerned, their enrollment in a course program is dependent on the accessibility to the study centers. Such people may have been isolated from the general society for a long time or may have been discriminated against due to their culture, tradition, or religion. They should be informed about the courses programs that have close proximity to their culture and language and are accessible to them without any obstacles. They should also be informed about the study centers that are nearest to their homes in order to facilitate enhanced enrollment. Similarly, learners with disabilities come with a number of questions before their admission into the program's courses. They may have queries about the accessibility features and study facilities. The problem of mobility for these learners is the prime impediment which hinders their admission into the institutions in the conventional pattern, whereas distance education, which is imparted with the help of technologies, reaches the learners at their doorsteps, and this assists in their learning process. Hence, learners with disabilities should be given prior information about the special study centers and their facilities in order to facilitate more enrollments for further higher education. 1.4.2 Counseling during the course. The types of support needed at this stage are as follows: introduction into the instructional system of the institution, distribution of self-learning materials, assignments, etc., information about TV programs, radio broadcasts, teleconferencing sessions, etc., provision of library services, organization of practicals at science labs, computer labs, industry, etc., organization of assignment evaluation and providing feedback through tutor comments, development of study skills and structuring the students' learning skills, provision of counseling and tutoring services, guidance before examination, communication of results of assessment, provision of relevant, accurate, and unbiased information. The services discussed above are relevant for all the students pursuing education through the distance mode and especially learners who are educationally and physically disadvantaged. Apart from all these support services, there are a few additional support services they need. The educationally disadvantaged learners might want to deregister themselves from a particular course program in the middle of the session due to their lack of motivation, problem related to accessibility, or mobility. It is therefore necessary to provide them with counseling on a more frequent basis so that they are able to continue with the study and do not drop out. The academic counselor should be able to take extra time out for these learners and be able to talk to them at a more personal level without any biases. During the examination season, academic counselor should advise these learners regarding what to study and how to study. Also, as far as the learners with disabilities are concerned, counselors need to identify the individual needs of such students and give them information about the different formats in which the self-learning materials are made available to them. For instance, if a person with hearing impairment is unable to understand a certain topic during the course, the academic counselor should be able to present the topic with the help of graphics visuals. Besides that, there should be enough flexibility to allow learners in these categories to prepare and submit the assignments according to their on format and information should be given to them beforehand about the use of scribes and provision of extra time during the examinations. The at-risk, socially disadvantaged and disabled learners can also be given certain responsibilities within the study centers so that they feel that they are a part of the course and work more efficiently towards achieving their goals. 1.4.3 Post-completion counseling. The types of support services required at this stage include communication regarding final results, grades, awards, convocation, advice regarding career advancement, job opportunities, future prospects, obtaining feedback on the programs and services provided. Some learners require additional support services even in the post-course stage. For example, if the learner has failed badly in the examination, it might lead to depression and complaints about the marking system followed by the university. At this time, the academic counselor has a vital role to play in explaining the procedures to the students. The academic counselor should be able to guide these students with regard to their future plans. Regarding job prospects for the at-risk, socially disadvantaged and disabled learners, the academic counselors should have enough knowledge about the opportunities available for these students in their respective fields. Another support which can be provided to them is by making provisions for collecting feedback from the learners about the services provided to them during the course's programs so that their suggestions would result in better and more efficient services to the learners in the future by the institution as well as by the academic counselor. At the same time, non-academic counseling can also be provided to the learners in terms of developmental and problem-solving support. For example, the technologies available to these learners will be of no use unless and until they are able to facilitate the functions of these technologies. Hence, the counselor can help the learners develop a basic understanding about the technologies available and their uses. Also, during the course program, if any learner has any problem, the counselor should be able to comfort the person to avoid depression, which may help in preventing him or her from dropping out of the course program. 1.5 Forms of counseling. Distance learning takes place both through an individual's interaction with the self-learning materials and his/her social interaction with peers, tutors. Communication between the learner and the academic counselor institution takes place through various media. In fact, it may be said that distance education derives its strength from two-way communication, from the types and levels of interactivity it can support. 1.5.1 One-to-one versus group counseling. Counseling services are provided to help the learners to manage any difficulties they face so that they can enjoy and fully participate in their studies. Some of the learners may find studying in distance education quite difficult to negotiate, or they may experience personal or family problems which interfere with their academic and social life. One-to-one is an independent, confidential, and personal counseling service. It gives the learners an opportunity to talk to someone about any problem they may be experiencing. This basically means that one needs a caring and patient person to talk his/her worries over within privacy, knowing that what that person says is confidential. Some learners may have some practical issues that they want help in sorting out. Here, the counselors may not use a particular counseling method. Some of the problems for which learners in distance education seek help are often related to stress, lack of motivation, depression, parental separation, loneliness, relationship difficulties, sexual or personal identity, academic or study concerns. Counseling is possible in a group situation. Normally, a group might consist of any number from 3 upwards, commonly a dozen, but it is perfectly possible for it to go up to 30 or more. We have seen counseling attempted in groups of 200. But this really then becomes another activity. Although a group loses the one-to-one relationship of counselor and learner, it gains something almost as valuable, the opportunity for learners to share their concerns with each other. Inevitably, in doing so, they discover that their concerns are common and find this immensely reassuring. The skills in group counseling are just the same as one-to-one counseling, except that the counselor is using them primarily to encourage learners to talk about their concerns and solutions with each other and not with him/her. In addition, the group counselor must develop some sensitivity to the dynamics of the group. For example, let us assume that you are a counselor who has put together a group of dozen or so learners who are about to start their distance education course at a local center. How would you help them talk about the issues, concerns, anxieties, and hopes that will certainly be present in that group? Here is a possibility. 1. You introduce yourself within 2 to 3 minutes. 2. You say, now, I want you to get together with any other learner in pairs. Introduce yourselves and say briefly why you are taking the course and how you feel about it. Take 5 minutes. 3. After 5 minutes, you say, now, I want each pair to get together with another pair and share your introductions and see what motives and feelings you all have in common. Take 10 minutes. 4. After 10 minutes, you say, now, let's all come together and share our introductions and all that we've been discussing. 5. At this point, the learners will have discussed their feelings in pairs and in groups of 4. They will have discovered that many of their concerns are mutual and will now have no difficulty in talking about their feelings in the larger group. Indeed, you may have difficulty in getting them to stop talking. As they talk, you will be able to listen, clarify, reflect, and decide upon general, consequent action, such as preparation, with the whole group. This particular group process of discussion in pairs, threes, fours, and so on is known as pyramiding or snowballing. It can be used in many different situations. 1.5 face-to-face and mediated counseling. Everything that we have said so far applies to face-to-face counseling, and in many ways this remains the most important medium for counseling of all kinds. However, it can be extremely expensive in terms of staff, time and travel, and could also be inaccessible to distant learners. One way of at least reducing the first problem is through group counseling. We have now dealt as comprehensively as we can in a short space with the skills of counseling. But, as you are now well aware, in distance education, the varied media, such as face-to-face, correspondence, and telephone, make a critical difference to everything we do. For instance, so far we have made at least 3 implicit assumptions about how counseling is conducted. However, these assumptions may not be true in all media. What are those assumptions? That counseling is a two-way process between a counselor and a learner. 2. That counseling is directed at individuals. 3. That it can be initiated by either the counselor or the learner. You may be able to spot other such assumptions. But counseling is possible with the use of different media, though each medium has its own advantages and disadvantages. Counseling can be done through different mediums like telephone, letters, handbooks, audio and video, cassettes, teleconferencing, broadcasting, and internet. 1.5.3 Developmental and problem-solving counseling. This is both an activity and topic-based classification and relates closely to the 2 main points at which learners raise issues, the decision and barrier points respectively. Developmental counseling is often the most appropriate response to decision points. It is concerned with the development of learners. So, it covers issues such as pre-entry, for example, course information, alternative course and institutions, preparatory advice, motive clarification, time allocations, institutional information, and entry requirements. Entry, for example, study skills, institutional requirements, orientation to study at a distance, and preparing assignments. Course choice, for example, course information, recognition, of course, levels of difficulty, possible prerequisite courses and knowledge, relationship to other courses, and possible career directions. Career choice, for example, dealing with overall career directions, specific career wishes, qualifications, experience, possibilities of employment, and job hunting skills, withdrawal, for example, clarifying reasons for, helping to deal with the sense of frustration and disappointment, suggesting alternative courses, and encouraging learners to return to study, motivational, clarification of motives for study. Remotivation, relating motives to appropriate courses, organizing and structuring time and social demands. To some extent, developmental counseling is easier than problem solving counseling. It is usually unstressed, the learners are not in a particular hurry to make a decision, and so there is time to explore appropriate directions. Withdrawal counseling is, of course, the exception. This can be more difficult. Problem-solving counseling is often the most appropriate response to barriers in the learner's progress. Subcategories of this might be institutional, for example, dealing with system breakdowns, discussing cases for exception and appeal against regulations. Dealing with unsuccessful appeals, changing tutors and so on. Personal, for example, illness, disability, marital breakdown, childcare, bereavement, aging, unemployment, re-employment, work, pressures, all in so far as they affect a learner's progress, study, for example, developing appropriate study methods, helping to improve concentration and reading speeds, adapting to distance learning, overcoming negative study habits, such as late assignments, and developing group study methods, assessment, for example, essay writing skills, providing assessment and dealing with exam anxiety, time, organizing and structuring time, prioritizing activities, clarifying motivation, and so on. One of the reasons why we find this classification helpful is that it suggests general approaches to specific issues, particularly in the last 4 areas. For instance, when dealing with these areas, we carry mental algorithms as follows: personal barriers, how far can be helped, study and assessment barriers, check anxiety levels, time barrier, check motivation. Personal barriers, how far can be helped? If we are trying to help Simeon deal with a personal problem affecting her studies, then we have to remember our limitations, especially those of a lack of skill or time. We cannot, for instance, help someone solve a difficult and long-standing marital problem. What we may be able to do is to help them contain that problem so that they can continue studying if that is important to them. 2. Refer that problem to someone better equipped to help, such as a doctor, priest, or psychotherapist. 3. To be enabled to temporarily withdraw and help them feel all right about it while the problem is being dealt with. These processes are together known as holding, helping someone, at least to maintain their position in the face of irresolvable difficulties. Only you can decide how far you feel able, in the sense of being skilled and qualified, to go. Fortunately, learners will always respect that limit and will very seldom ask you to offer skills that you feel are beyond you. Study and assessment barriers, check anxiety levels. Say, someone approaches us with a study or assessment problem, typically in this form, and you will note some of these are transferring queries. It just doesn't get in when I read something. I'm finding it hard to concentrate. Can you give me a few tips? How do you get started on an essay? I'm sorry, this assignment is late again. I must learn to read faster. First, we check that they are actually working in a sensible way. For instance, in the first query, we would get them to describe how they read. Do they survey and question the material to get an idea of what it is about, or do they just read straight through? If they have an apparently reasonable approach to reading, then we would begin to wonder if some basic anxiety about study is getting in the way. See, time barriers, check motivation. Someone may raise a time-related problem such as, I just don't seem to be able to find the time to study. Give me a few tips on organizing my time. I'm just getting further and further behind. My tutor says I'm taking too much on. Again, we would first check the realities of the situation. What are the demands on their time? How do they organize and prioritize their time? If it begins to emerge that time is available to them, then we would begin to wonder if their motivation was beginning to fail them in some way. 1.5.4 Academic and Non-Academic Counseling. This is a topic-based classification and is an alternative perspective that you may find useful. It is particularly helpful when considering the way in which counseling services are organized in an institution and the time of year at which they occur, that is, who does what and when. The informing advising counseling spectrum is still applicable. Academic counseling. This covers counseling concerning all courses and course-based topics. Examples of this might be preparation, specific difficulties related to course study, and exam techniques. Academic counseling tends to relate to specific academic and cognitive issues. Non-academic counseling, it covers all other areas of counseling. Examples here might be course choice, general study difficulties, and exam anxiety. Non-academic counseling tends to relate to general and affective issues, academic and non-academic counseling during the year. As this classification is topic-based, examples can be illustrated in calendar form. Academic and non-academic counseling, who does what, depending on the way in which counseling is organized in an institution. See Unit 3. The academic-non-academic split can be useful in deciding who does what. For instance, academic counseling could be deemed to be the business of the tutors, and non-academic counseling, the business of the central institution. Of course, the learners would not draw this finer distinction. So, both sides would need necessary training. 1.6 The qualities and skills of a counselor. Academic counseling is an important support service provided to distance learners. A good academic counselor needs to have certain qualities and skills for providing better services. As counseling is a non-directive venture, a counselor should have certain qualities like warmth, acceptance, genuineness, empathy, and some skills like selecting, listening, and structuring. These qualities and skills are discussed in detail below. 1.6.1 Qualities of a counselor. Rogers identified 4 particular personal qualities that appeared to be essential to working as an effective counselor. They are warmth, acceptance, genuineness, and empathy. Warmth, the ability to communicate personal warmth and to make learners feel welcome and valued as individuals. Rogers called this non-possessive warmth, which means that it should be appropriate and genuine but not overdone. It should not make the recipient feel taken over or manipulated in the way that they might feel by the behavior of some kind of salesman. Warmth means saying hello, can I help you? No, I'm sorry, I'm rather busy. Please keep it short. People are sometimes not warm for various reasons like tiredness, overwork, consciousness of status, and maybe unfavorable attitude. That apart, without an initial welcoming start, a counselor is unlikely to have a chance to practice the other qualities and skills. Acceptance, the quality of being able to accept other people and their feeling for what they are, without criticizing or judging them personally, which of course is different from judging their behavior. Criticism, whether in the form of moral injunctions or negative statements, has little role to play in counseling, as it tends to shut down communication. But let me try to illustrate this. A learner says to you, I think these regulations are very stupid. Which of the two following responses would you make? A. The regulations all have a purpose. You know. B. It sounds as though you're pretty angry about this business. I hope that you chose response B, since response A is defensive and had critical and is not likely to encourage the learner to think sensibly about how he/she feels. People are sometimes not accepting because of authoritarian personalities, prejudices about class, race, age, and sex, and because of fixed often wrong ideas about their roles. I'm a teacher. A teacher's job is to criticize. Genuineness. The ability to be naturally yourself, open, friendly, and undefensive. It means not adopting a superior role, as in the white coat syndrome, of the person who has the answers and must be respected. It also means being honest with yourself and your learner about your own feelings and activities, which would be the genuine response to the following comment from a learner. I'm just finding this part of the course so boring. A. But you chose the course, you'll just have to work at it. B. To be honest, I found parts of my job boring sometimes. Do you think you'll be able to carry on through to a more interesting part? Again, we hope you would choose B. Response A is not likely to help the learner very much. Response B at least admits that you have the same experience from time to time and will encourage the learner to think about ways she can keep going. People are sometimes not genuine because of status consciousness or feelings of their own inadequacy, which are hard to admit. Empathy, the ability to sense the feeling and experience of another person, and so to fully appreciate them as if you were that person. This is not quite sympathy, in which you take over the feelings for yourself. It is being able to say, I think, I can see you feel that, not I felt exactly the same when that happened to me. The latter statement takes over the learner's feeling and in a sense takes it away from them, which is the most empathetic response to the following statement: if I don't pass this exam, I shall have failed completely. A. Oh, you mustn't feel that. I mean, it's not a difficult exam. B. You feel that if you fail this exam, all your work will be wasted. You may find B as the empathetic response that will ensure that the learners feel you understand and appreciate their feelings. Empathy can be a difficult quality to acquire, sometimes because of the difficulty of understanding that every person's experience is unique, and that our own experience can only be a fallible guide to how other people might feel about an ostensibly similar experience. But it is important to try to feel empathy in all circumstances. These, then, are the qualities of a counselor. How can a person develop them? If that question is considered objectively as a teaching exercise, it sounds faintly absurd. Can you really teach someone to be warm and genuine? In fact, that is not necessary. Most people, certainly most people who are attracted to distance education, already possess these qualities to a high degree and are already well on the way of being effective counselors on that count alone. The challenge is to recognize that these interpersonal qualities are essential and to allow yourself to express them professionally. In order to remember the individual qualities, it might help you to think of the word wage, warmth, acceptance, genuineness, empathy. 1.6.2 Skills of a counselor. There are 3 essential skills of a counselor: selecting, structuring, and listening. There are a host of other subsidiary skills, but these are the core ones. Selecting. We have already mentioned selecting. It is the process of deciding what kind of response from the informing advising counseling spectrum is appropriate at any particular stage in an interview or an interaction. An inappropriate response can halt progress in its tracks. Giving information to someone who really needs advice or counseling may satisfy him/her temporarily but will not answer his/her real or long-term needs. Information is likely to be very frustrating for him/her. We will not give any more examples at this stage. Turn back to Unit 1 and take another look at subsection 1. 2.1 to 1.2.3. Listening. The skill of active intelligent listening is central to counseling of any type, whether informatory, advisory, or counseling. As Rogers himself wrote, I discovered that simply listening to my client was an important way of being helpful. So, when I was in doubt as to what I should do in some active way, I listened. It seemed surprising to me that such a passive kind of interaction could be so useful. Does it mean that a counselor simply listens? Of course, it is not as Simple as that. The key lies in the words active and intelligent. The counselor listens actively by encouraging learners to think through their queries or problems for themselves. The counselor listens intelligently by clarifying what is being said and looking, sometimes, for what is not being said, the implications of omitted or unclear statements. There are some useful but simple techniques to help you listen better. They are open-ended questions, acknowledgements, reflections, and silences. Open-ended questions. Use questions that encourage a learner to think and to develop rather than give straight monosyllabic answers. For example, a counselor asks the same question in two different ways. Which do you prefer? A. So you think you want to be a maths teacher? B. How do you feel about maths teaching as a career? As usual, we hope you have chosen B. The open-ended question. Question A. Encourages the answer yes or no and no further. Question B. Encourages the learners to think more about the implications of what they are saying. 2. Acknowledgements. This simply means that counselors do not sit listening in inscrutable silence. They are always indicating that they are listening, nodding, saying ah or if you prefer, and using positive body language, maintaining reasonable eye contact, sitting alertly on the same side of the desk as the learner, and so on. It also means not interrupting the learner unnecessarily. 3. Reflecting. The most useful listening skill is reflecting, sometimes called mirroring. It simply means saying back to the learner something that he has just said, but in such a way as to clarify it, reassure the learner that he is being heard correctly, and encourage them to go on. It is best illustrated by a simple example. Learner: so you see, I just don't think I can keep up. Counselor 1: oh well, I'm sure it's not really that bad. With a bit of effort, etc. Counselor 2: you're worried that you'll fall so far behind that you'll have to withdraw. Counselor 1 is certainly trying to encourage the learner, but fails to understand and accept the learner's real fears. The learner is likely to feel that the problem expressed simply has not been heard or has been denied. Counselor 2, on the other hand, has reassured the learner that the problem has been heard and also gives the learner the opportunity to clarify what is worrying him, her. Note that reflection does not simply consist of repeating the learner's words but rephrasing them and clarifying them before reflecting them back. 4. Silence. This is at once a simple and most difficult skill. It means not feeling compelled to fill every gap in the conversation, but being able to give the learner space to think through what they are trying to say. It means being able to distinguish between the negative silence of someone who is stuck and the positive silence of someone who is just trying to work out how to phrase his/her next statement. For example, learner: I'm not sure what kind of course I want. Silence. Counselor: learner: I suppose I really want to feel I'm helping others. This example was taken from a real experience, and although it sounds almost trivial, it was the start of a useful session on choice of courses. These then are the practical skills of listening. It may help you to remember them as ORS: open-ended questions, acknowledgements, reflections, silences. Structuring. By now you may be asking how, after listening to the learner, do we actually move towards solving their problem, answering their query, choosing the right course, etc. This is the heart of counseling. It means to know when, for example, is the right moment to stop counseling and give advice, when a learner has solved a problem for himself/herself, or at least come to terms with it, when you have done as much as you can. This is the process of structuring your counseling and the interviews in order to move towards the best solution. Structuring consists of 3 stages: clarification, checking, and consequences. Clarification, the basic counseling process of clarifying the issue or problem by dialogue with the learner. 2. Checking, going back to the learner to ensure that the problem or issue is now completely clear, or at least that it is as clear as it is possible to able at this stage. 3. Consequences, settling with the learners what will be done by them and by the counselor, action or advice, as a result of the interview. These stages can be short or long, but they are almost always present, even in the simplest informing interview. For example, learner, I'm interested in a career in nursing. Counselor, is that mental nursing, district nursing or hospital nursing? Learner, oh, I meant in hospitals. Counselor, hospital nursing, right. I have a leaflet about that. I could send it to you if you'd like. Learner, oh yes, please. Counselor, fine, I'll put that in the post to you today. And then if you have any questions after reading it, you're welcome to contact me. Again, learner, thank you very much. Clarification is important because it is essential to find out the learner's needs. This is often a short process but can be much longer when, for instance, learners are not fully aware of what they need. Checking is important before deciding on any action to be sure that it is appropriate. Consequences agreed upon mutually are important because any action or advice not mutually agreed upon is almost certain to fail. Think how often you have been given advice which you failed to take because you found it unconvincing or inappropriate. In a complex problem, the stages may well be repeated for different states of the same problem. Think of it as a cycle. Epilogue. This has been a long and complex section, and you should not worry if it feels rather like learning to drive a car. Remember how to steer and change gear simultaneously is not unlike remembering to listen, select, and structure all at the same time. If it helps, remember the various mnemonics, qualities, wage, warmth, acceptance, genuineness, and empathy, skills, SLS, selecting, listening, structuring, selecting, IC, informing, advising, counseling, listening, ORS, open-ended questions, acknowledgements, reflecting, silences, structuring, 3 CAs, clarification, checking, consequences. Much of your counseling will be very straightforward, needing more information than skill. Indeed, it is probably true that 80% of your counseling will only need 20% of your skill. But there will certainly be 20% of the counseling needing 80% of your skill, and it is often very difficult to tell at the outset of what sort of query you will get. So, we hope you have found the emphasis on skills in these last sections helpful, even if you only exercise the whole battery of skills on the rarest minority of occasion. 1.7 Technology-mediated counseling. We have now discussed in a short space about the qualities and skills of counseling as comprehensively as we can. If this were a course on counseling in conventional educational settings, then the unit would have almost ended here. But, as you are now well aware, in distance education, multiple technologies such as radio, television, telephone, mobile technology, computer, and internet make a critical difference to everything we do. For instance, so far we have made at least 3 implicit assumptions about how counseling is conducted. However, these assumptions may not be true in case of all media and technologies used in counseling. Those assumptions are: I. That counseling is a two-way process between a counselor and learner. 2. That counseling is directed at individuals. 3. That it can be initiated by either the counselor or the learner. Each technology has its own advantages and disadvantages, but largely, these technologies are found very much useful in counseling. Telephone as a technology can be used for effective counseling. With the help of telephones and mobile phones, counseling can be provided on one-to-one basis and to a group of learners through teleconferencing. Answer phones also can be used in this regard. Similarly, counseling is also possible through interactive audio-video programs. Based on the needs of the learners, different audio-video programs on CD-ROMs and audio cassettes can be used instead of face-to-face counseling. Now, various distance education institutions have been using radio and television for counseling purposes. Through live interactive programs, counseling can be provided to the maximum number of learners at a time. At the same time, internet and email facilities make our work much easier. Counselors can use email facilities to provide one-to-one as well as group counseling effectively. Even online counseling can be provided to a large number of learners at a time all across the globe with the use of internet. In this way, technologies can be used effectively for both academic and non-academic counseling. 1.8 Summary. The unit covers the following topics. There are at least 9 ways of supporting learners in distance education, tutoring, feedback teaching, grading, taking action, advocacy administration, assessment, informing, advising counseling. Counseling covers a spectrum of activities like those of informing, advising, counseling. A query can be answered from the most obvious place on the spectrum or from elsewhere. It could be a transferred query. Counseling is important in distance education because of the particular characteristics of the learners, the institution, and of distance learning itself. Counseling takes place at decision points and barriers and can be initiated by the counselor as well as the learner. Counseling can be categorized into ways: development and problem solving, or academic and non-academic. Theories of counseling: Rogerian or non-directive counseling, stages of counseling, pre-admission, during the course, post-completion counseling. Forms of counseling: one-to-one versus group, face-to-face versus mediated, technology-mediated, telephone, letter, handbook, audio-video, cassette, broadcasting, computer and internet. Qualities of a counselor: warmth, acceptance, genuineness, empathy. Wage, skills of a counselor: selecting, listening and structuring, SLS. Selecting skills: informing, advising, counseling, IEC. Listening, skills: open-ended questions, acknowledgements, reflecting, silence, oars. Structuring skills: clarification, checking, consequences, 3 CAs. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.